We're Hasani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hasani. Good to have you on with me here this morning. It is, what is today? Today's Wednesday, right? Wednesday, Humpback Day. Listen, we want to know who you are, where you're dialing in from. We want you to be engaged in this conversation. We're talking about communication, right? We started this conversation off yesterday, and I told you we were going to take our time with it. There were several tips, several techniques, great conversation, great dialogue. I think this is one of the main issues that people struggle with the most. So we're going to walk through this comprehensively. How would you rate your communication? I know it's easy for you to point out what your spouse is not doing right, how they're showing up wrong, but let's talk about you for a second. How are you communicating? On a scale of 1 to 10, if you had to measure it, 1 being the worst, 10 being the greatest, how effective is your communication? Just drop that number right in the chat. And so whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, we can see you, and I'm going to shout you guys out this morning. We're talking about how to have how to communicate with a difficult spouse, right? You know, oftentimes it feels like it is such a struggle. It is just so hard. Why does it take all of this? It doesn't have to be this challenging. Can you just act right? Can you just have some act right so that we can get through this very difficult conversation? And it seems like a lot of times people bring in a negative energy, they bring in angst, they bring in emotions, they bring in hurts, they bring in feelings, they bring in all types of things into the relationship, into the conversation, which makes the conversation very difficult and it's hard to get through it. Guys, I appreciate your numbers and your honesty. One person says, I'm a 4, to be quite honest, I'm a 5. Then I got another 5. I believe somewhere between a 7 and an 8. Okay, well, at least it's a self-assessment. Somebody just said good. I want a number, right? I want to know what good means, how you're quantifying that. And so we're going to get into this conversation today. We're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. We're talking about rules of engagement for effective communication when you're dealing with a difficult spouse, or if you are the one who's being difficult, because the rule is not just to protect you from your partner. Sometimes you're protecting your marriage from yourself, because I know that I can pop off. I know that I can get caught up in my emotions, and it doesn't serve me. So let's go to the first point. Listen, stop bottling up your feelings. Stop bottling them up. There's got to be a filtering process when you release it. I just had a can of soda on the counter over there, and I wish I had it, because if you notice, a lot of times a can of soda, right? The soda's contained in the can, and you go through situations and circumstances in life, and you just hold on to things. It feels like you're being shaken. It feels like you're being tossed in so many different directions, and what's happening inside that can, things are just building up, and as soon as you open up that thing, all of the soda, all of it just explodes all over the place and creates a disaster. And that's what happens when you bottle up your feelings, when you suppress, when you push down, when you don't take the time to articulate. We've seen this time and time again, even in the space of betrayal, that those individuals who chose not to articulate what was going on with them, what was going wrong with them, they passive aggressively or indirectly dealt with it in unhealthy ways. And so because they didn't feel comfortable, they didn't feel free, they didn't have a desire to articulate and emotionally connect with their spouse, they chose to emotionally connect with other individuals. And that becomes the slippery slope. And so you gotta be willing to let it out. And if there's hatred and vitriol and contempt attached to whatever it is that you're trying to say, Let's take a page out of Abraham Lincoln's book. Now, if you read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, in that particular book, chapter 1, it tells the story of Abraham Lincoln and how before he became the president of the United States, he had other roles, but he was known for being so critical, so condemning, right? He would call you out publicly. He would take ads out in newspapers and literally just annihilate people with his words. And one day he did it to the wrong one, and someone called him into a duel that could have led to his death. And because he was called out publicly and he wasn't a fighter, he had to go through with it. And so here we are, they're preparing for this duel, and just literally seconds before someone would have died, someone intervened and stopped it. It was a huge lesson for him. It was a huge lesson for him about how he articulates, what he articulates, when he articulates. And so for him, what he would use after that experience, he would write letters. He would get it out. He would get all of the hatred, all of the venom out, and then re-edit the letter and then properly articulate it to whoever he was trying to deliver a message to. So sometimes when you bottle things up and it finally releases, it comes out in a very negative way and does more harm than good. But when you're able to filter it out, when you're able to get it out, maybe you're recording it into a phone, maybe you're writing it in a journal, whatever you're doing, it allows you to release the emotions attached to the message. And then you can filter through all of that to come up with the actual message that you want delivered to your partner. And when you do it in that manner, it goes tremendously well. So that's a phenomenal tip for those of you who really struggle. How do I separate how I feel about the issue from the issue itself, okay? Here's another tip that I think is going to be critically important. You know, when you're in a conversation, get control before things get out of control. Like at the end of the day, there is a pattern, right? There's a cycle that you and your partner typically go through, and you both know what it is. And you know when you've reached that point, you know when things are about to go left, you know when that internal anger meter is going into the red. When you feel it going there, when you sense it going in that direction, it would be better to preemptively show up and stop and respond to the situation rather than reacting to a situation, right? Two different things. What can we do to prevent versus how do we recover? Recovering from a situation could be a lot harder than preventing. Now, when you're preventing that situation and trying to get control before things get out of control, your spouse may feel controlled by your technique or your tactic. But you have to begin to explain why you're doing what you're doing, what the purpose is, because you want to maintain a level of peace. You want to maintain a level of composure as you navigate through a very difficult conversation. So if that means taking a pause, coming back later, if that means, checking in with each other about energy and tone, whatever that means, maintain control. Like at the end of the day, if you are not in control, meaning not you, but if you two are not in control of yourself, then you're not going to be able to have any type of control in terms of dealing with a difficult conversation. Now, when you have these conversations, one of the things that you have to do, let's go to the next point. Don't dredge up the past. Listen, avoid old grudges. Stick to the issue at hand. I cannot articulate that enough. I can't tell you how many times couples are engaged in conversations and they walk down memory lane and they will pull out things that happened not just last night, last month, last year, sometimes a decade ago, sometimes 20 years ago, sometimes before we even said I do. And so the question is, well, how is that relevant to the situation that we are dealing with? How is bringing in a plethora or an incalculable number of issues that have been on your heart and mind for so long, how is that appropriate now in the midst of this conversation? Because what happens is if I bring up an issue and you respond with other issues, you didn't even give my issue a moment to breathe before you robbed me of the issue. So it's no longer about my issue now. It's about how you responded with all these other issues that you also feel need to be dealt with. And so the reality is, let's just say there's 20 issues, 20 problems, 20 situations that need to be addressed and resolved. Well, what do? Well, you can only eat one slice at a time, right? You can't eat a whole pie at a time. You can only eat one slice at a time. Likewise, you can only deal with one issue at a time. And if you're not taking the time to do that, then nothing ever gets properly addressed, nothing ever gets resolved, and you find yourself in the same situation that you were in before the conversation started. The only difference now is now you feel more exhausted, more defeated. You feel like throwing in the towel, calling it quits, giving up because nothing is working. And so you have to be really sensitive to making sure that you stick to the issue at hand and you don't get up off that issue until you resolve it. Fine, we went 2 hours today. We still haven't resolved it. Let's pick up tomorrow where we are today. Because if we don't go back to the very place that we're stopping, then guess what? It'll be another unresolved issue, and then another thing that creates more contempt, more frustration, more disappointment, more hopelessness, more helplessness, and we get to a point where we throw up our hands and we're like, you know what? I just don't know what to do. I'm out. I quit. I give up. I can't do this anymore, because you haven't learned an essential skill, which is communication. Guys, you're watching a Couples Academy show. We're gonna take a quick break and then get back to more of these techniques. We wanna hear from you. Stay right there.
Couples Academy is committed to serving couples around the world by reaching beyond cultural lines and language barriers. We are proud to announce that we now serve the Spanish-speaking community. So whether you're here in the United States or abroad, Couples Academy has a place for you.
Couples Academy se compromete a servir parejas de todo el mundo, superando las fronteras culturales y las barreras del idioma. Ahora, estamos orgullosos de anunciar que servimos a la comunidad de habla hispana. Entonces, ya sea que estés aquí en los Estados Unidos o en el extranjero, Couples Academy está aquí para servirle.
Hey guys, we're back. You're watching the Couples Academy show. If you're enjoying what we're talking about today, we would appreciate you just clicking that share button and letting someone else know who may be in need of this conversation on communication. Share it with them. Let them know that we're live so that they can join what we're talking about. All right, we have a couple comments. First from Denise. I have a lot of recordings to get the words and anger out during this season of discovery. Well, sis, I would encourage you to do that. If you have a lot of words, get it out, record it out, write it out. The point is you want to release it, because if you don't release the anger, if you don't release the emotions, it begins to get bottled up, and then you can become like a weapon, right? Oftentimes our feelings and our emotions are weaponized. And who do we take it out on? The very ones who are in our circumference. So you don't want to do that. So that is a daily ritual that you should engage in, and we all should engage in if we're holding on to a lot of stuff. Because at the end of the day, you know it's true. You have these conversations and they just don't go well. You always come out feeling worse than how you felt when you started. And 99% of the time, it's because we don't show up right for the conversation. And we allow what we know is inevitably going to happen. And so all we're doing is rewinding the tape for more bad decisions and a worse outcome. So yeah, great idea. Release it in recordings and through journaling. LaShawn says, good morning. My husband would often flood me with past mistakes, and he would want to address everything at once, which was overwhelming to me. And right, we just spoke to that. You can't do that. Maybe people bring up the past because they feel like these past issues aren't resolved, because the things that happened in the past are still relevant today, because you're still doing it. You're still showing up this way. Or because we never dealt with the past, it's a pain that I still hold on to. And it's hard for me to deal with you in the present. Fine, you're not doing it anymore, but we never took the time to address the past. And so therefore, maybe it's worth going back in order to move forward. It's worth going into your past in order to move into your future. But you have to preface conversations. So if you go there, both of you are aware where you're going, and you're dealing with one particular issue of the past at the time, and not ad nauseum, not just for the sake of doing it, not to vent, not just to make a point, not to prove that you're right, not to make your spouse feel bad, but to find clarity, to get closure, to find healing in that space, and then to be willing to move forward, right? That's what I think should happen. Cleveland says, I told my spouse that I am better at communicating my feelings when I write them out. They insist that I should be able to express myself verbally. Well, see, this is where, understanding your spouse is critically important. I think that there are times that are appropriate for different things, right? So if expressing yourself verbally is a struggle for you, that is your Achilles heel, you just can't do it, it's worth developing the skill of being able to articulate, right? So here it is. When I'm hiring somebody for a position within our company, no matter what the role is, I want to know, well, how are your written and verbal communication skills, right? I think that both are important. And likewise in conversations and communications, both are important, right? So while writing is good and should be done, and maybe that will help you. See, if you're writing, right, and you know that you're preparing to engage in a conversation, and you have your written exercises and techniques that you're doing prior to the conversation, now you can better articulate what you wrote in that conversation. And so for you, maybe it would be good to know what the topic is going to be before we have it. Know what the conversation is going to be about before we engage in it, so that I can give thought to it. I can write out some thoughts, and I can bring those thoughts, those written thoughts, to our conversation so that I can be more engaging, okay? So ask your spouse if, that would be a good idea for you two to do. I think it could be. Gonzalez says, download the Couples Academy app on your device for Android or iPhone. Be able to connect with Couples Academy no matter where you are. Go to your Google Play or App Store to download the app. Thank you for sharing that. It totally slipped my mind. I know on Friday when we had our practitioners on, they mentioned the app, but I just want to show you guys that the Couples Academy app has been a long time coming. We had it quite some time ago, I think a couple years ago, before we were ready for it, and now it is actually ready. So you can download it whether you are on, I think it's what is it? Amazon app. It's on Roku. It's on iPhone, and then also for Android users. And so we want to be able to engage in you in a phenomenal way. We have some things coming out, some promotional tools coming out about the app and how you could effectively use it. But we would encourage you to engage in there, because there's going to be some really cool things that we will only be doing on the app that we won't do live on a show or live to the public. So you have to be engaged in the app in order to experience that. And we really put a lot into it to give you tools and resources and to share our practitioners and our services with you. So please go ahead, do it while you're watching the show. Go to your app store, download it today, and put in the comments that you have done so. We would definitely love to know that you've done it, and we would love to connect with you on the other side. So I appreciate you saying that, Gonzalez. You're always there for support. Marcy says, ideas about the shutdown communication. We are talking, no arguments, but one of us just shuts down and can't communicate about the topic. I always see it in my husband and let him know that I think we can discuss later. It feels like we are always in this place. The shutdown, right? The shutdown, another way of saying that would be the stone wall, where you're just not talking anymore. We were engaged in this conversation and you just shut down. Now I feel like I'm having a monologue instead of a dialogue, and now it makes me feel some type of way. And so some people, as a knee-jerk reaction, will shut down. So the question then becomes, okay, what is happening that causes the shutdown? Like, if your spouse has a tendency to do that, or if you're the one who has a tendency to do that, let's reverse engineer it to figure out what is the stimulus for it. Because if we could figure out the root cause that leads you to do so, and we address that, maybe it will keep us from shutting down. Some people shut down when the conversation has gone on for too long. Like, it's been 3 hours, like, I'm mentally and emotionally exhausted. I just can't do it anymore. Some people are shut down by the tit for tat. Some people are shut down because the energy level is just way too high. Some people are shut down because no matter what I say, you give me no voice. All you do is cut me off and talk over me and tell me that I'm stupid and tell me that I'm wrong and it doesn't make sense. And so sometimes the way we show up causes our spouse to shut down, or the way our spouse shows up causes us to shut down. So I think that's worthy of a conversation. What is leading to the shutdown, right? And then once you determine what that is, create rules around that to prevent that from happening. What a great point. Guys, I hope this is helping. We're giving you tips on how to take your relationship to the next level. Be right back. One more break. Stay right there.
Couples Academy is expanding its team to meet the growing demand of people in need of help around the world. So if you're a trained, licensed, or certified expert in marriage enrichment, infidelity recovery, sex therapy, life coaching, cognitive behavioral therapy, divorce mediation, financial coaching, or family therapy, contact us today.
Stop talking about me. I know y'all talking about me. And I know you're saying, Hasani, dude, update your videos. Why does it still say April 8th through the 10th? And we passed that. Because I'm busy. I got a lot going on. That's why we need help. That's why we hire. That's why we need support, and we need our ambassadors. We need support so that you can help us do this right. So if you saw that Last Chance Weekend video and you want to go, it is May 13th through the 15th. The link is in the description. Make sure you sign up today. All right, let's get back to the comments, folks. We're talking about techniques, right? Procedures, tactics of the things that we can do to enhance our communication. All right, so let's go to another one. This is huge, guys. Some of you really have a problem with this, and this is why I wrote the chapter, Help, My Mouth is Killing My Marriage. Because in there we talk about the verbal assassin. And I admittedly played the role, and I want all you to be honest. If you've been the verbal assassin, or if you are the verbal assassin, I want you to say, that's me, in the chat, because listen, this may be how you express it. Now, you need to avoid name calling, making threats, any type of abusive behavior or violence of any kind. Now, I know there's a lot there, but some of you have a tendency to go below the belt. And let me just keep that there. You go below the belt, you say things that you absolutely do not mean, but you're in attack mode. You look at your partner as your nemesis, as your enemy, as your opponent, and it's on. Oh, that's what we doing? That's where we going? Boom. I got you now, right? And so oftentimes if we feel hurt by our spouse, what do we tend to do? We want to one-up them. I know what to say. You know, they say sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. That is a lie. Sticks and stones can break your bones, but words and names can kill you. Words can do what sticks and stones cannot, because if I throw a stick at you or a stone at you, it's going to hurt for a minute. But eventually, it's that physical wound that I created the pain will go away. But if I throw a word or a name at you, it creates an emotional wound, and that scar could be there for quite some time. Some of you are still impacted by what your mother or your father or your sister or your brother or mama and them or the teacher said to you in the 3rd grade. It has shaped you. It has formed you. It has created a deficit in some of you, a weakness, a flaw, an insecurity, an inadequacy in some of you. The power of your words. And so you think that just because I said a couple words, you should be, listen, why are you so sensitive? You need to be a man. You need to toughen up. Why are you being so sensitive, woman? Don't you see, this is how we approach things. And we don't realize that our words are damaging. Our words are damaging. And because you feel hurt, you're going to project your hurt and pain back onto your partner and say things that are hard for them to let go of, hard for them to overcome, because you just want to be mean and surly. If I'm hurting, you're going to hurt. Now we both hurting. What? Right? That's our approach to things. And when you apologize, it's hard to believe that you mean it. When you say, oh, I didn't mean what I said, I just said it to hurt you, it's hard to unhear what we heard. It's hard to forget what we have received. And so that's why you have to be extremely careful not to, as Lakeisha would say it, go into that pop-off spirit where you just popping and popping and popping. You have to be mindful of your words. I'd rather you silence yourself than say something that can be irreparable, irreversible, undeniable, indisputable, irrefutable. You feel what I'm saying? You got to be careful with these words that you speak, because words are power, and they take shape and they take form and they come back into your life with the possibility of becoming a reality. That's why when people say, well, fine, you know what? You ain't no good. You're just like your daddy. You know, when you do that type of stuff, when you call your wife out, right? You call her out of her name and talk about what she's not and how you're damaging her. Because some people get to the point, and I think is unhealthy. Well, fine, that's what you think I am, then that's exactly what I'm going to be. Fine, I'm going to be that, since that's what you think anyway. So when people say, are you cheating? I don't try. I know you cheating. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I am not. But since you think I am, then fine. I might as well go ahead and do what you're accusing. See, this is what happens when you're in an unhealthy space. This is what happens when you are loose with your lips. This is what happens when you don't know how to deal with a situation, when you find yourself in it. And we drop all the rules, we forget sanity, we operate in immaturity, and it's an all-out war. Think about Democrats and Republicans, right? Two kids in a sandbox fighting with each other oftentimes. When you're watching commentary on news shows, when you're watching debates and you see them going at it, and it's just like, would y'all grow up? You're a poor example of leadership in this country because of how y'all go for each other, right? And we see the same thing in our relationships where we go at each other. And guess who has a front row seat to the foolishness? the children, and you're leaving a legacy because you're teaching them how to talk. You're teaching them how mommy and daddy operate. So, oh, this is normal. This is what I know. So when I become an adult, I'm going to do what I saw mommy and daddy did because that's what they did. So therefore, that must be what I should do because I'm going to mirror what has been modeled for me. Do you see how damaging it is? So not only is it hurting your spouse, not only is it hurting you, not only is it hurting your relationship, but it's hurting your children. You are leaving a legacy of destruction because of your nasty, foolish, destructive words. Well, I'm talking to somebody. I'm hitting you right where you at, right? Somebody's feet are getting stepped on today. If I'm stepping on your foot, put your feet under the table so I can't reach them. If I had my bomb, I will just be banging that right now. So you got to avoid these negative words and these nasty name-calling engagements that you participate in. And you got to stop threatening. Because guess what? The fact of the matter is, your threats are empty. Your ultimatums, why do you? It's manipulation and control. 9 times out of 10, when I get couples who are in panic mode because their spouse is threatening to leave, I already know what it is. And so I ask the question, okay, well, this threat to leave, how long have you been threatening? How long have you been teetering on divorce, talking about maybe you should move forward, maybe we should just end it all? How long have you been saying that? Is that a new occurrence, or is that something you've been saying for a while? Man, I've been feeling this way for the last 10 years. So you've been saying it for the last 10 years? Yeah. Threat is nothing more than control and manipulation. You ain't going nowhere. But you want to put the fear of God in your spouse. You want to put the fear of abandonment and rejection and loneliness in your spouse because you know that that's the silver bullet that'll control the behavior, that will shut them down, that will keep them from arguing, so you use it every single time. And guess what? It's whack. It's whack. You're creating more insecurity in your relationship when you do that. Abusive behavior, violence of any kind. See, first of all, your words can be very abusive. It's too bad that there's no law that can convict people for their words. If there was, there would be a whole lot more people behind bars than you could even imagine. But there is a law that prevents physical violence, physical abuse. Yet and still, interestingly enough, in these domestic violence situations, so many people get away with almost murder. Almost murder. Because I did it in the name of love. I just happened to be in a dark space. I just happened to. And so we hide behind this banner of love, but we do destructive, controlling, manipulative things that bring devastation to our spouse and to our relationship. You should never put your hands on your spouse unless it's to bring them pleasure. You should never put your hands on your spouse to bring them any type of pain unless it's pain that's tied to the pleasure, if you know what I mean. But pain, no. Aggression, no. Acting out in violence, no. Slapping, punching, Will Smithing your spouse, no. It's funny how Will Smith is now a verb. I'm about to Will Smith the mess out of you if you see. No, you can't do that. A lot of times, because you can run circles around your spouse with your words. I mean, you one of the best when it comes to words. You are like Muhammad Ali with your words. You can stick and move and jab and but maybe you're doing it to someone who cannot compete. And in their frustration, because they have no words, they do the next best thing. They put up these hands, and now they become physical. And I have zero respect for behavior that is violent. I have zero respect for violent behavior. It should be something that you do not tolerate. There should be an uncompromising rule and conviction that you've established in your relationship that no matter what we may say, we will never get to the point where we place our hands on one another, because now we've crossed over a threshold and now we find ourselves in a completely different space of disrespect. Put your hands down. Put your hands in your pocket. Sit on your hands. Do what you have to do. But don't allow your fury and your frustration and your pain to cause you to rise up in that particular way to put your hands on your spouse. There's so many comments in here. We're going to stay just a couple minutes longer because I want to get through some of these comments. And I'm reading these in real time. Don't even know what's being said. I've been told that and not aware that I cut with my words. But I'm not intentionally doing it. I'm just trying to express what I need to say. So I'm trying to be more conscious of how I deliver words. Listen, if you've been told it by more than just your spouse, believe it. Believe it. Self-evaluate. Okay, you got to figure out. First of all, we know that words are 7%, tonalities 23%, facial expressions, body language, gestures 70%. But sometimes those 7%, that 7%, your words could be damaging. Words become like daggers that cut into the heart of your spouse and destroys him from the inside out. We talk about, in terms of women, there are makers of men and breakers of men. And makers of men speak life into, edify, encourage, uplift. Breakers of men know how to tear a man down with those words. Men, many of you are extremely verbally abusive. This is where declitterized came from. When Danielle said, in the midst of an argument, year 3, year 4 in our marriage, she said to me, "You declitterized me." She's saying that I was robbing her of her femininity and her womanhood, and I stripped her to the core with my words. I didn't realize how damaging my words were either. But I made a decision that I would never form my lips to criticize her again. It took me time, but I was disciplined and determined because the last thing that I wanted to do was shut my spouse down, destroy her spirit, build up this impenetrable wall that didn't allow her to receive anything from me. And so if you really want to change, first a want and a desire is necessary. When you have a strong desire for it, I'm going to tell you something, you can accomplish anything. Denise says, "I never thought I was a verbal assassin because I wouldn't say bad words, name calling, or abusive stuff, but I would be nice nasty." And after the last chance weekend, I learned that my tone was harsh on my body language and voice was filled with vitriol and venom. Man, that is so real, and I appreciate you for being transparent and vulnerable and sharing that. It's so funny. I don't know if it's The Audacity of Marriage or another book I wrote, but I remember I used to go to these conferences all the time, and I remember I was speaking in front of an audience of maybe 500-600 people, and we got to the Q&A portion, and we were talking about communication, and this woman got up and she said, people, I was like, "What's your name, sis?" She was just like, "People call me Venom." And I'm like, what do they call you? Venom, because I'm strong and harsh and venomous with my words like a snake. And she was wearing it as a badge of honor. And I literally turned that lecture into a one-on-one counseling session in the midst of 500 people and had her in tears because she wore it as a badge of honor. It became the thing that she was known for. It became her strength. It became her protection. And I helped her to realize how she was literally destroying herself by holding on to such a destructive name that she self-identified with. Because whatever your self-identity is, you are trapped in a behavior based upon your identity. So if she sees herself as venomous, then venomous people only do venomous things. And that's why she had destructive, broken relationships. Everyone had issues with her because of what she owned in terms of her identity. So guys, we have to release it. We have to begin to look at ourselves through another lens and change the dynamic of how we approach things. All right, I'm reading these in real time. Well, I feel like maybe that's for men. My husband and I were close to divorce, and we both said it, but at the time, I did mean it. God came and saved our marriage, and we reconciled. You may have said something earlier that I'm not quite referencing, but hey, I love the fact that you two have reconciled. Amen and amen. Natural Beauty says, if he wants to leave, let him go. You will be the one stuck in a disrespectful, unhappy marriage. Now, come on now, Natural Beauty. That ain't right. That ain't true. If he wants to leave, let him go. Well, if that's the case, we wouldn't have all of these restored, phenomenal relationships of people who have been through the struggle and been through the fight. I would say that, typically speaking, by the time people come to us, one of them wants to go. Right? They're teetering on, I'm up out of here. But yet, something in them says, maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a possibility. Maybe we can turn these things around. And so let's just say you're that one who is on the fence and you just want to get up out of here. You just can't take it anymore. And 95% of you says, screaming go. Well, I'm talking to the 5% in you that wants to stay. We can turn that 5 into 50. We can turn that 50 into 90. We can turn that 90 into 100. All it requires is taking a journey, taking a step. Possibly a step that you fear, possibly a step that you don't believe is possible. But if you're willing to take the same step that so many other couples have, you'd be surprised what's waiting for you on the other side. Healed relationship, restoration, a new lease for life. And to think, Danielle wanted to go. Yep, there was a point where she wanted to go. There was a point where I was considering going. But if we had done that, we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't have this community. We wouldn't have this level of impact. Not that we're the end all to be all, because we're not, because there's a lot of great, phenomenal coaches and counselors and therapists and pastors and ministers out there that do amazing work. But there are certain couples that have been assigned to us, divinely ordained to us, that we've had the opportunity of being a part of their story. If we had walked away, who knows what the long-term impact and effect would be for all those other couples. So Natural Beauty, maybe the only thing that's causing that person to stay right now are the kids, or the finances, or one's own reputation, or pressure from family and friends. Maybe those don't seem like good reasons. But if it keeps them together, I'll take any reason that I can. And in the meantime, if we do the work, we can turn those things around and give them amazing reasons to stay. That's the miracle that happens when you embrace this process with Couples Academy. What a perfect way to end the show. Guys, I hope you got something out of today's conversation. We're going to continue with more on tomorrow. But until then, download the Couples Academy app. Make sure you share with the community that we are here. Have a conversation about communication with your spouse, what you can do to enhance it. And let's pick up in the morning for another session. Love you much. Love you all. See you soon.